It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Sit down. All right. So audio check. Listening for audio. We got a little co-host noises. Anyone hear the co-host noises? All right. So now we'll get some things opened over here. Get the show going for real. Your fancy, polished, big city podcasts that never have any problems, they're fake. This is authentic podcasting right here. Got some feedback from Krabby. Welcome. Thank you. All right, so now we can actually have our show. Let's just act like nothing. We never even started it already, so we'll just do this. And Puppy needs a whooping, so we have to give Puppy a whooping here. But let's just start off with this.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
All right, so we're starting this all over again, and the puppy left. He's being a big jerk, so we've replaced him with a Hydration Nation 32-ounce water bottle. These are really nice. Go check out our YouTubes or our Amazon store and grab yourself one of these. It's so cold that when I take a drink out of it, I have to be careful that it doesn't freeze my mouth. That's refreshing because of the Hydration Nation water bottle. Anyway, so we'll take a look at this week and what happened specifically about the Second Amendment this week. And I guess my computer's still making a bunch of noises. We're going to be taking a look at over on the screen here. We're going to be taking a look at our Substack. For people that are listening to this on the podcast, of course, you're listening to a podcast. And there's a bunch of people that are reading our blogs, and then there's some people that watch the video live. So there's a couple of different ways that we offer this info for a couple of different reasons. What the heck is making all these noises? Something is plugging and unplugging or something on my desk here. So we've got a podcast. Most of the people that are listening to this are listening to the podcast. Give us some feedback. We use Podbean now to distribute them. We had, what in the heck is doing that noise? I'm going to unplug this phone. I think it's the phone. We had, nope. Do y'all hear that noise when it happens? Something's plugging and unplugging. Something is not happening. We had been doing all the podcast feeds, our own, like feeding them ourselves, and we kind of consolidated them under Podbean. So we're able to get a lot more analytical data from, I'm about to smack something. What is making that noise? What is plugged in? There's nothing new plugged in. Boy, you can't talk about being distracted. Having something constantly plug and unplug. I guess if the dog's not sitting here, I don't need this in my face. What the heck? Is this because my computer's hot? Oh man, my computer's roasting. Could be that we're just having heat-related issues. It's not that hot in here, but something's going on. All right, sorry for all distractions. It's been a horrible show. 10 minutes in, I wish there was a way to cut it off, but let me just smack that real quick, see if that solves everything. Didn't, but does feel better to have smacked the laptop really hard. Yeah, we have now been distributing everything over on Podbean, and we are able to get some analytics. I think if I wasn't distracted by all this stuff, I would have said something to the effect that now that we can see those analytics, it's neat to be able to see who's showing up from iHeartRadio versus iTunes, which are right now kind of back and forth in competition, how many people are listening on one or the other. So if you're listening to this podcast, then we encourage you to leave some kind of feedback. If there's a thumbs or a heart or a plus sign or whatever it might be, that you can leave some feedback. It engages the mechanisms that the internet runs on, right? And gives the podcast platform a reason to recommend us, or more reason to recommend our projects. So we'll move on from that. And if I hear that one little beep again, I'm going to restart my freaking computer. So we do this live. We record it and send that out as a... I'm restarting everything. This show's already screwed up, so... Oh my goodness. So let's see if this works now. So here's how you know that this is a real podcast, not one of them fake podcasts, because the fake ones wouldn't put this out. They would act like none of this ever happened. All right, so we're going to go back to the Substack. Open it up. And I think I was saying that we... welcome, everybody. So I think I was saying that we go live every week to get this information out and we do this live, then we make it a podcast. The description, what we're saying on the podcast, the script, so to speak, is... Oh, now you want back up here. I see how it's going to be tonight. All right, come back up here. We'll see how long he stays up here. Everybody can see. Everybody check your watches, because Mr. Guy here decided it's time to come back up here. He has to come back up here. Big important thing to come back up here, right? Let's see how long he wants to be back up here. Let's see if Mello goes outside or not. And then how long he'll stay up here. Don't knock over that water. Quit touching me. I'm trying to have a TV show here. Trying to do our TV show. All right, so we, in addition to saying all this stuff, there's no point in just saying this stuff. I don't have any idea what was making the noise. I just restarted and slammed on my computer a couple more times. A lot of times by punching your computer, you'll solve a lot of these problems. And then it knew better not be making those noises. Dude, you know what this show is. Why are you coming up here and being like this? See what this is right here? This is a dog who should have said something like this before the show. But I was on Gizzards this show. But this is, I want to go OUT. And it's messed up, dude. We just started the show, and it's already screwed up. So I'm not stopping the show in the middle of it to take you where you want to go. So just you sit here. Calm yourself down. Calm yourself down. Now he'll calm down because I told him to. Yeah, he's yawning. It's essentially just like charging his battery. It's just like stretching his little rubber band so that he can keep going. Now we're going to get the panting treatment. Okay, so we go live so that, and what we say is a bunch of stuff that's written on the description of this video, and we take that information and shove it over to these blog posts, and that's what we're seeing on the screen. So it took me like 17 minutes to describe what I should have been able to say in one sentence at the beginning of the show. I'm about to get a robot. Oh, Mello is outside. How long have you been outside? I didn't even know she was outside. Did you jump out the other window and walk all the way around the house and come in from this side? How'd you even get out there? I just opened this door. All right, so we take the written information about that we're going to be going over tonight, and we distribute that in blog posts and in social media posts. So our goal is to each week update everybody, but also leave a record, leave an archive, and put that archive all around the web for a couple of reasons, mainly to distribute the good works that these folks are doing, either the projects that they're working on or the events or the that create content that they've created. I just noticed that little guy had some snot on his face, and no need for him to be uncomfortable when he's already uncomfortable. So we made him a little more uncomfortable. We're wiping his face so that he can be more comfortable at the end of all this. All right, so with that, we're now actually starting the show. And again, just how to know you know that's a real show, not one of them fake shows that are just in it for the fame and fortune, because I'm just doing this. I'm not just doing it. I would not be able to just do it. Actually, I wouldn't be here. The house wouldn't be here, and I'd probably be living on the street. I'm not even talking shit. Like, I wouldn't have had the house if it weren't for these Patreons. So there's a scroll going at the bottom of the screen right there. It says, our Patreons make it possible for projects like this. For our projects like this. Wait, projects make it possible for our projects. Make it, what does it even say? Our Patreons make projects like this possible, I believe is what it says. And this being an ongoing project, our other projects are mostly online efforts that have been around for sometimes decades. I'm not even talking shit. Like, some of them are more than 1 decade old. So we really do appreciate that. I wouldn't have been able to afford them or keep them going at all. And I would have actually not even been able to keep putting effort towards this forward. So I do it because I think there's a need for it. I think by normalizing the conversation about guns, by ending the BS debate that we have, this little back and forth game that the both sides are profiting off of, when we end that, and we will, the results of that will not only be everybody has the guns they want, and if people leave us alone, and people realize that those other issues that cause the problems, guns are just one of the vectors. Once we've accomplished that, we can apply that understanding and that awareness towards other issues in society. So there's a big game here, and it isn't just so we can have toys and have people leave us alone. It's so that we can accomplish some important things in society. That right now guns are the target, but we all know when they are done with guns, what do they do in other countries? Oh, we remove the guns, but there's still violence. So we're not going to address these issues. Let's go ahead and address the next scary thing, knives, or the next scary thing. So with that in mind, we appreciate those Patreons who give us a chance to keep working on those awareness projects, and then eventually, and really soon actually, we're going to be able to start going forward on stuff. Just paid off the tax bill on last year's stuff, and that means we're really doing well going forward here. With that being said, thanks to our people that are watching us live. I could do this as a recording, and I could have edited all this out, and it would do better because people wouldn't have to listen to 15 minutes or 20 minutes of garbage now. But I don't have the time. I don't have the inclination to do that. I do this live on the YouTube so that people who are interested in being awake in the middle of the night to talk about these issues or be part of this or have a place to do it. I really value this element that the internet gives us. I've been on the internet since the 90s. I worked at AOL for a long time. I worked at Microsoft for a bit, and I got to see inside of some of the initial internets. Well, the beginnings of what we have today as the internets and some of the high-speed stuff happening. So ever since then, I've known that there's some tremendous power that the internet is going to be able to give us, that First Amendment type of stuff. And I really appreciate being part of that. And I appreciate that the people who are up in the middle of the night to be on the other end of that, because doing it is one thing. But, my goal isn't to just do it in such a fancy way that people flock to it. It's to do it. My goal is to do this in an authentic, real way. So I appreciate the real people that are on the other end of the internet. We've broadcast this live. What am I doing? My mouse is over there. We've broadcast this live on YouTube and X, and tonight YouTube is winning. In past nights, X has dominated the viewership, but tonight YouTube is winning. So feel free to be part of the conversation by typing stuff in there. Let's go and say hey to everybody that's joining us tonight real quick. We got Gizzard Gary, who hosts a live show right before this. It's not our opening act. We're more like the encore to his show. We got Dale out there. Welcome. Crump, who was chatting with Crump on Night Strike's show earlier. I'm going to be on with Crump Tuesday of next week. If anybody wants to check that out, as soon as I get some links and stuff, and I'll start passing them around to everybody so you can check it out. Krabby Turtle joining us from the East Coast. Some people would say the Metric Coast. Welcome. John Brown Productions is out there as well. Welcome. And Alex joining us. If anybody else is out there, how would we know? Oh, NC is out there also with a puppy on there. So there's a puppy. This dog knows at least one Basset Hound. Is that a Basset Hound or is that something else? This dog's one of his good friends is a Basset Hound. They hang out quite often. Anyway, we'll get into it. So this is a pretty decent week. It's episode 1775, which means tomorrow is our 1776 episode. On Saturdays, Tony Simon joins us and we do Ask Gun questions. And if he's available, I just always assume, but if he's available, he has a diversity shoot on Thursday. But assuming he's available, we'll have episode 1776 tomorrow. But that means that we've been doing this podcast 1,775 episodes. That's another reason you know that this one's real. It isn't some fake thing because I post them. We're posting stuff on the regular. A Brittany, is that the name of the breed? I guess I don't know that breed, but very cool. People who have dogs for icons are, I'm not saying they're better than other people. It's just that makes the internet more interesting. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, tomorrow will be episode 1776. That means we've been doing this for 1,700 something episodes. And I'd like to get back to doing it daily again. So yeah, jump on Patreon if you know people that are interested in using their capitalism to support projects like this one. Then we've got the channel membership, I guess, on YouTube. That takes the most. You give somebody $1 on YouTube, and I think YouTube takes 30 cents or 40 cents. And on Patreon, it's more like, for me, it's like 10% or something. So I think, but it's much less. And there might be other platforms that are more or less. I think directly is obviously usually the cheapest, because then you only have the bank fees. Because occasionally, whatever the percentage is, you also have bank fees on there. But whatever it is, it's just the way it is. When you have electronic money, there's going to be some fees along the way. But thanks to the folks that do participate in that. Let's see. We'll dig into this week's show. So we've got the news of the week, which I abbreviated quite a bit. I was in Gizzard's show when I was putting all this together. And there was just a lot of noise, I guess, a lot of stuff that I didn't consider useful for specifically Second Amendment. It might be gun related for sure, but and a lot of it is just monitoring the ongoing issues. And that's not news. That's just, we want to have 12 news articles. So we only have 6 that are interesting or new. Let's go back and talk about some other stuff that's kind of still boiling. But I guess I assume, but I get most of this info from this section of the show from the NSSF newsletter each week, along with some of the headlines and titles of some of the videos that happen each week. And if I see, all the people that do the 2A news, quote unquote, if they're all talking about something, I don't bother talking about it on here usually, because it's either obvious or no reason to talk about it, because it's too obvious. So I try to include the stuff that's off that radar, the main clouds on the radar or whatever, the main lightning strikes, the other stuff. And I get most of that from the NSSF newsletter. There are a couple other newsletters though. And this week I only had a chance to check out the NSSF one, and I boiled it down to, obviously Hunter Biden had his thing, and there's a big question mark there to see what the results of that are. I think my hesitancy is to assume that they want us to assume a lot more than I think we should be assuming. Is that the way to say it? I think that a lot of people are happy to see the headline that's handed to them, and they're happy to regurgitate it. But these are shrewd people with long-term goals in some places. So monitoring or being aware of what's going on is one thing, but being happy about it or understand, so act like it's over, I don't think is wise right now. So I'll just leave it at that. That news happened this week. Then we have the potentially more immediately interesting news with the bump stock results from the Supreme Court. We also had circuit court judges at the national level blocking the pistol brace and the engaged in business rule through different mechanisms. So essentially we have a lot of positive stuff happening. I'm going to hesitate to call them wins for lots of reasons, but definitely a week with things happening, interesting things happening, and not necessarily bad things. How we deal with them and the consequences is a whole nother conversation. And it would be interesting. There was actually 2 good conversations that I was aware of today about these issues, and hopefully we'll see more that stick around. Our tendency as a community is to, whenever we get good news, is to go into, okay, now I can go back to buying stuff mode. And there's plenty of people who are willing to sell you shit. So they'll be more than happy to jump back into, now let's go back to buying stuff mode. And, that's literally our, what's the word? Like, that's all we do. We do that every single time. So we'll see if that happens this time or not. We do have new players. I don't want to doom us to that cycle, but that's the tendency of the players that have been around maybe the last 10 years. We have new inputs. We have new organizations and new people that hopefully have been around long enough. A lot of these people have been around since 2015. So that means they've been around for a decade almost. And they've had to have seen some of these cycles. We had a pretty big weird thing happen a couple of years ago that disrupted the cycles to some extent. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how we interpret this stuff, and if we all go back into let's rest easy mode, or if somebody whips everybody into now that we started winning, let's finish the fight mode. We never finish the fight. Penn is out there. I don't like Hunter Biden, but those gun laws are still constitutional. Yeah, that's a good way to summarize it. And I think that's I would say the like norm for the gun community. Like, we don't like the dude, but we definitely don't like the laws, right? But then you get a lot of nuance there. And I don't know how much time it's worth spending on that stuff. It's not necessarily all that important of a topic for us. It's one of many important things that's happening right now. On the other hand, they'd love it if we just ignored all the shit. And I don't like playing into anybody's hands when they get to determine when to drop shit, and they know that if they drop shit when it's busy, everyone has a tendency to ignore it or have their hands full, as opposed to dropping it when they got nothing else to do but examine it with a microscope. So if we ignore this shit, we're playing into their hands. And if we waste our time with it, we're wasting our time with it. So it's, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying we have a winning option, but often your best option is the one where you lose less. Is that a way to say it? So let's get into losing it, none at all. I have to drink something because I am dying. Where did I go? It's right in front of me. Let me get this Hydration Nation 32-ounce double insulated flask, which I crammed so full of ice that I drank all the water out of it already. I'm going to pour a bunch of this water in front of this dog, see what happens. Tonight's episode brought to you by generic seltzer water. Water with CO2 bubbles in it. It's more refreshing than regular water. Don't you think, little puppy? He doesn't like it. He has no interest in it. Rednecks will throw stuff over there and throw it away later. Hillbillies will just throw it over there and leave it. I think that's how it goes. All right, so let's talk about two-way talk. Suicide Prevention Saturday. Brooke Cheney does a project out of Connecticut every Saturday. It's afternoon for me, but it might be evening depending on what time zone you're in, where she attempts to shed light on and create awareness of the conversation about mental health awareness and suicide prevention, knowing that 2 out of every 3 deaths from a firearm are suicide. The overwhelming number that's used against us are suicides. The other side, who wants to keep everybody confused and ignorant, suggests that gun deaths are the problem, and they ignore the fact that suicide is a majority of them. And then they'll ignore the fact that political issues often create the mitigating circumstances or the root causes of the whatever causes violence. Guns are yet the vehicle that violence happens with. So Brooke attempts to shed light on the big aspect of that, to remove not only the numbers, but to improve the outcomes of those folks who unfortunately choose that option. So as gun owners, we understand not just this fact, but also that many of those, I don't want to say most, but many of those numbers are also veterans or military, police, EMS, and those occupations. And it's a shame that we allow those people to be misunderstood and neglected as far as the feelings that the society will push out there over the years. But it's also sad that those numbers are used against us so often. So by normalizing that conversation, giving us an effort each week to talk about it and then to move the ball a little bit forward with tools or resources or approaches or just perspectives. Brooke is doing the most work that's being done, period. I'll just say in all of 2A. Anybody can fight me on this because there's many millions of dollars being thrown around out there, but who is working on normalizing the conversation about the majority of firearms deaths? Nobody, because it's a complicated thing to talk about. As soon as you bring up suicide, it really affects your social media analytics because most of the logarithms can't differentiate any positive talk about suicide with any negative talk. So you can really have a issue with your analytics or your numbers with your channels. And it's sad that most organizations will put their numbers in front of what's important. And we know that because none of them have anything that's even close to a suicide branch, like division, major campaign, nothing. Hey, speaking of major campaigns, somebody's going to get a whooping. You didn't go down so that you can go over there and get in trouble. I dropped a bottle of stuff the other day, and he's insistent on licking up all the glass. He thinks it's hilarious to lick up all the glass that I missed. All right, so in addition to Brooke offering that project every Saturday, Talk America is also in the realm. They're a nationally sponsored organization who's efforting to focus on the intersection of guns and mental health by both dealing with the gun industry, but also the mental health, or the mental health community industry at a couple of different levels. And one of their recent projects is to have their podcast, the Talk America podcast. They had Derek LeBlanc on from KidSafe this week, and they ended up dissecting or having conversations about what is going on. Where's Mello? What's going on? It was more distracting when I had that beep going on. They had Derek on to talk about some of the injury statistics that come out. Essentially, this whole guns are the leading cause of injury or death with children. And they leave out the under 1-year-olds because there's not enough of them, and it ruins the numbers with waiting. And then they add, of course, 18 and 19-year-olds, which are debatable on whether or not they're children. And of course, since that's where most of the violence that's related to gangs and drugs and cartels and who knows what, that's when you get their ability to suggest such a thing. So they talked a bit about that for a bit, for like an hour. Mello, come here. Come here. What are you doing? Where's Mello? You want some of this? I'm going to give one to the puppy, and Mello's not getting any. That's the best way to get her in here. So then we have Melissa from Dragonman's talking to one of their candidates for I forget which district in Colorado. Oh, you're in the house. I thought you were outside. See, a minute ago you were outside. Are you jumping out the window and going around the house? We've got a whole nother situation going on here. So now we're trying some Zesty Paw Calming Mini Bites. Also available on our Amazon if you're interested. There's one for you for being a good boy, and one for you for being a good girl. These do not smell good. These smell somewhere between rat poop and fish. I'm sure they liked them. They didn't even think about smelling them before they were chewing them up. This is a pretty good conversation because it's not so great as much as it's insightful. He's pro-gun because he's pro-gun, but he's pro-gun, I'm going to just say like in a FUD way. He's pro-gun in a way that politicians are trained to be pro-gun. So, we're not going to see a change overnight, but it is great to be able to have the internet to be able to take a look at real people making real videos with real politicians in a state like Colorado. So, Colorado's unique, and it's one of our battleground states for sure. And Eva, Miss Melissa's sister, has a project we talked about last week where they're going to strategically support politicians in the, let me just say districts, because I don't know if that's the right word, where there's the most potential to make change with the election this coming year. So, when you take out the districts where Democrats or anti-gun people are never going to be taken out, and then you've got places where gun people will never be taken out. You remove all those from the playing field, and you're left with the battlefield counties or districts or whatever. So her sister is working on a nonprofit, I guess, to fund those candidates, and then you've got Melissa here interviewing one of the candidates, and I think it's in her area. I watched that earlier this week. We'll be talking about Dragonman again here in a bit, though. Then you have Cape Gunrooks doing a special edition. This is actually pretty good because I came up for air from doing some stuff today, and I think this was today, earlier today. And I came up from doing stuff that pays the bills, let's say, to kind of watching what was going on YouTube, and Toby was live, and he ended up, while he was live, watching.
That's why I say the best map.
The most of this guy's video. So I ended up watching a chunk of Toby's video and saw this guy's video, and they're talking about the decisions today by the Supreme Court. So that's good to hear and know about from Four Boxes Diner right away. So I didn't bother to link his video, but you can watch Toby's video and you'd see this guy's video. Now let's see. Then we have, oh my goodness, I'm yawning. We have Gun Owners of America. This is like a 5-minute video. 8-minute video talking about guns. All right, criminals don't obey gun-free zones. So that's a bad place to leave her.
Criminals don't follow law.
I didn't watch that one, but Gun Owners of America is putting out those position things. I don't know if anybody else is doing that kind of stuff right now, so I guess that's all we get. Better than nothing for sure. Then we have, these should be coming out daily. I don't know. Daily's probably too much. There's probably a sweet spot there. Like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they could come out with data. I've been thinking about how to get the Minuteman University updated, and in order to do that in consumable parts, I would think 3 days a week for a year or two would probably be required. So if a national level organization was going to do it and try to make it palatable and consumable 3 days a week at least, but you'd have to really play with that. You might even have to go to 5 days a week to even happen to be able to get through it all in any amount of time that's useful. Because if you did it slow enough for people to be interested, it would take you years and years and years to do it all. Dale is taken off. Welcome, or thanks for joining us. Appreciate saying hey. When people jump in and jump out, it's always cool to know that you're out there. I'm not like some shows where I stop everything and say hey to everybody that jumps in. Every once in a while, I do like to acknowledge people that are watching, though, especially when you're communicating, when you're doing stuff. We'll stop and talk about questions and things. But we do the show in the middle of the night. Okay, so I was going to take a second here to just mention that we do the show in the middle of the night. I've always done this. We've done this show 1,700 episodes or whatever. Most of those are in the middle of the night. I'd like to do this all night, every night, like be a 5-night-a-week show, and then some special editions on weekends or something, where we go live and talk about guns and Second Amendment. But kind of, if we were live every night, we'd definitely be able to do both. I default to, if I only got so much time to be able to devote to this, I'm going to talk about Second Amendment stuff because it's important. The gun stuff, I think, is fun. I can sit out a gun conversation. I've been in lots of them. Every once in a while, I get a itch to talk about them. Or if somebody's talking about a topic I like, I'll listen to it. But if I had enough time to go live every night, we would definitely be talking a lot more about guns and more interesting guns than people that are getting paid to tell you about specific guns. If you're getting paid by somebody to talk about their guns, you're only going to talk about their guns, and every other gun sucks. I hate that. I think that's lame as shit. So I'll never take money from a gun company to talk about their guns. I'll take money from a gun company to provide a show, and then I'm going to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. But when we talk about guns, we'll be talking about the kind of stuff that you probably can't buy anyway, unless you're buying surplus or used or something. Because I like guns. I don't like red dot optics and grip angles, which are just, the modern stuff that people are getting, I don't know, addicted to. Like, that's no fun. I'd rather talk about some gun stuff. But anyway, we'll that's all here and there because nobody's jumping on our Patreon to make that happen. It would be cool. We might effort towards that though. Give me some feedback if it's something you'd be interested in, having an all-night gun show every night on the internet, and we'd explore and play with some of the other things that we've done over the years. But like I say, once I'm in a different position here in a month or two, we'll see what it's like, what kind of feedback we get on that. I don't know if people on X can deal with it, but on YouTube at least, we've had real good success in the past with people that are on night shifts. I think probably most of our Patreons are people that are on night shifts or shift work in the middle of the night, and appreciate having something live that's focused on something that's important, not just garbage. Hey, what's wrong with you today? Can you be good for any length of time? Come here. Now he's licking his toe, which he's not supposed to be doing, and he knows it. Can you just be good for another, I don't know, hour? He's pretty much indicating that he's not going to be good for another hour. All right, so I put this one up here because it's good to talk about the American Suppressor Association once in a while. I definitely would like it if they were more aggressive. They used to, who remembers when American Suppressor Association hit the scene? I think it was 2010. It might have been 2012. I think it was 10 though. Nah, it could have been 12. No shit. When was it? It was 12. It was 12 because it happened pretty much. It was one of the reasons I got on the road with Haas. Is I saw them go to the NFA branch in West Virginia, and I was like, well, if they can go to the NFA branch, I'm going to the NFA branch. So was that the first time we went there? That might have been the first time I drove by the NFA branch, but we did not, in fact, get to go visit them. But that's when they hit the scene, is when they went and visited the NFA branch and made video, and everyone got to see the milk crates or whatever they are, the legal. Come here. The milk crates of forms just sitting around in the hallways. Why did you just start to pick in the middle of my show to decide to start licking that toe again? He's been licking this toe for a while, and it's been a real issue with him. And then for the last day or something, I what do you call that? I hydrogen peroxided it really good, and then I kind of yanked off this little clot or something, like some kind of a scab that was on it. And then he kind of left it alone for a few days. And then right now he decided, you know what? I'm going to start aggressively licking that toe again. He needs one of them cones. Psst. Quit it. Everybody thinks, oh, that co-host, he must be a good boy. No, he's not a good boy. He's only a good boy occasionally. There he is, the toe licker. Behave yourself. Why don't you just go to sleepy like a good dog would do? I'm going to get me a new dog. Get me a co-host that's good. Anyway, so I'm really a fan of American Suppressor Association. I thought they were doing really good. Then we had the Hearing Suppression Act for a while there. Hearing Protection Act, I guess it was called. In 2018, a mere 6 years later, where they were essentially going to have suppressors taken off of the NFA. And, of course, what happened in October of that stupid year? Well, stupid, garbage, fake bullshit happened in Vegas, and all of a sudden, Hearing Protection Act has been null since, not even brought up. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, they've gotten into, American Suppressor Association has really gotten into being a big fan of the low wait times. So it seems like they've been more of reporting on the low wait times than they are trying to get rid of the NFA anymore. But they're talking about Vermont suppressor hunting made permanent. So I think there's 9 states that still restrict suppressors, and then There's a whole list of states that you can hunt with a suppressor, or they removed the prohibition of hunting with a suppressor. But it's kind of nuanced, and since there's no actual recipe, every state banned it in a different way originally when they got scared of suppressors for whatever reason. Each state probably had its own reason for being scared of suppressors. They're all becoming aware and coming back to freedom in different ways. So just kind of monitoring that and mentioning that Vermont, a state that no one really goes to or hunts in, probably people in Vermont hunt there, but I've never heard of anyone going to Vermont to hunt. It might be a thing. People on the East Coast might know about that. This is somber and frustrating. So Reverend Ken Blanchard, has been a Second Amendment activist since, I think, the 90s, you could say. I don't know if I think he said 30 years. So if it's literally 30 years, then yeah, it would have been like 94 that he started. And he's officially turned off his Black Man with a Gun podcast. So I'm not sure what that means, other than he decided to delete it. Because it doesn't technically cost anything to leave a podcast exist. It's like having a YouTube channel. You don't have to pay nothing for your YouTube channel. If you don't get paid to have the YouTube channel, a lot of us get paid by YouTube to have a YouTube channel, of course. But if you're not getting paid, or you just turn off that whole process, and if they're definitely not charging you, so it really doesn't cost nothing to leave a project online. And often that's what people end up doing by design or not. There's often just projects that are abandoned or ended or neglected or unfinished or finished that get left online, and ceremoniously or not, I guess. And in this case, Ken decided, I guess, to pull it down, I think is what he's trying to say. I guess I hadn't gone and double checked, but he said he ended the feed. And again, since it doesn't cost nothing to leave the feed there, it's possible that he's just completely not interested in pursuing even residual comments or questions he might get or interactions he might get from the feed for its existence. He doesn't seem to be shying away from the fact that he had done this. He's not embarrassed of it or scared of it or nothing. He's mentioned it a couple of times on his new venture, his musical stuff. He's only done a couple of things, so he's definitely mentioned it. So, it's frustrating and somber, and, it's somebody's right. I'll say it again, we're not obligated. We're not entitled to anybody's time or effort on this stuff. People have their own interests and their own reasons for being part of the community and putting their effort towards activism, awareness, whatever you want to call that kind of stuff, moving the Overton window, moving the goalposts, energizing or encouraging people. Ken's existence made me start doing this stuff in the first place. I've mentioned this plenty of times in more than one way. When I first started doing stuff online, I was doing fishing stuff and camping and shit like that. I just hadn't been doing a lot of gun stuff at the time. I've had guns my whole life. It doesn't mean I run around shooting them every day. So I just been doing a lot more fishing and stuff at the time. And there was no fishing information about Arizona online. So I was putting that stuff up there. Then I kind of saw as I was looking around online, I saw some of the people like Ken and others who were present online doing stuff, awareness, activism technically wasn't called that. There wasn't anyone to activate. There was just the internet, but they were including their interest in guns and their activism with guns in their content that they were putting out there. And this was in the 90s, the mid 90s. So once I saw that was a thing to do, I was like, oh yeah, I'll start including that. And then, it's grown since then. But, that just by creating stuff, you'll often inspire or spark inspiration. And, I'm not sure what's going on with that, but we'll, again, appreciate the stuff we had while we have it. And don't assume that you'll have it forever. Don't assume your kids will have it. You can do things to ensure that stuff will stay around, but we can't assume other people are gonna do the same. Rabbi is saying, would always welcome back a daily gun show. Right on. Thanks for the feedback. I'll probably try it for sure. Matter of when I can do it and how well it goes. But especially when it's been 107 all day and now it's 86. This feels like cold. Like I want to open up all the windows and doors because it's warmer, cooler outside than it is inside. It's hotter in my house than it is outside of my house right now. So yeah, doing a show in the middle of the night. That's one of the reasons we did the show in the middle of the night, but I could definitely handle that. All right, now we'll get into the gun portion of the show. All that other stuff was more Second Amendment related, I guess. This is the more gun related stuff. She Fires does a show every Sunday evening, afternoon, depending on what part of the country you're in. And she focuses on training mostly, kind of for the new shooters, not necessarily just for new shooters, but great live conversation that happens each Sunday. She was talking about range drills, and it's super interesting for me to hear people who are actually new and not just people that have been around for a long time talking about stuff, because you've heard their conversations over and over, or I guess their opinions and their preferences over and over. But here are new people who are in the new community online bringing up training because, well, if you talk to anybody or listen to anybody old talk about training, they've never been training and they don't know nothing about training, so it's a lot of theoretical. You talk to the young kids and they've either decided to start training or they've at least paid attention to it or done some research so they were aware of it to some extent. And then there's like I'm gonna just say hero worship. I don't know what else to call it. There's like the schools of thought, and it's just like martial arts or guitars. I always bring it back to that kind of stuff, or maybe cars or something. But you're gonna get your people that are like, I like Chevy, or like I like Taekwondo, or I like rock and roll music. And yeah, you can play that guitar a zillion different ways, but I like rock and roll music. Like, yeah, you go to martial arts and do a bunch of different stuff, but I like Taekwondo. Or you could buy a whole bunch of different cars, but I like Chevys or whatever. So, there's people that understand you can do whatever you want, but they like their thing. And then back in the day, everyone would say, my thing is the best. And they'd have big conversations about which one was the best. But nowadays, it's much more mixed up. It's like it's a different conversation because there's no established groups. There's just a bunch of the remnants of the old established groups, I guess. And the people that are new are taking these like combinations of old techniques and applying them together. So it's just not super interesting, but definitely interesting to see a live chat that's jumping, talking about these things from the perspective of somebody in 2024 who's learning this stuff or dealing with this stuff for the first time. Super interesting. All right, so or you could just watch it and be part of that conversation talking about range drills. They essentially talked about range drills for a good hour or something. Speaking of talking about stuff for an hour, I think Gizzard goes live for 2 hours every Friday, just before this show. Calls it Fowl Territory, and has a couple of different topics and segments, I guess, and has a panel on, keeps the conversation going, keeps the community growing. Roll Call posted this thing, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I guess it's made by, GSG. So that makes sense, I guess. It's a stupid 9mm, of course. They could have made it in 40, which would have been cool, or 45, which would have been better. But they made a stupid 9mm. But it is, it's all plastic. I don't like these guns. I think they're stupid. But it is interesting that they made one finally, because they made an MP5 a while ago and made an MP5 in 22. I wonder if they'll make this thing in 22. I have no interest in owning Nazi shit. If I wanted to own Nazi shit, I would want to own actual Nazi shit that somebody killed a Nazi and you got their stuff. Like, that's the only Nazi shit I'd want around. But it would be full auto, and it would have been a bring back, and it would have been either what's that word? It would have either been registered or not grandfathered. There's a word for that, where they would have allowed it to be stamped. So if you had a World War II bring back stamped one, all right, I'll accept that one. But I don't see the reason of. I think he said these things cost a bunch too. So anyway, I just think it's neat, but I don't like Then we've got Ryan Shotgun with Charlie talking to this rabbi. It's kind of interesting. I've heard rabbis on before, but there's usually like 3 rabbis. I guess actually one of them is gone. He's passed away. So the role, we don't get too many other religious people, do we, in the gun community? I don't think I've heard of like the Reverend somebody. There might be a couple of podcasts. There was a couple of podcasts that were religious focused with guns, but I don't know that they interviewed. I don't know if they're all called like pastors or priests or bishops or all the different names, but you do see every once in a while rabbis, who I believe are just the priests of Jewish faith, right? So, but this guy was from, dang it, now I can't remember. I don't think he's from New Jersey. Or no, maybe he is from New Jersey. He's not from where Massachusetts, where Charlie's at. So this is a pretty interesting conversation. Like I say, you don't get rabbis on too often anymore. And for a while there, it was always the same guys. So now it's just to hear refreshing. It's refreshing to hear a different take. But rabbis, if you haven't listened to them before, they're pretty matter of fact. Like they're pretty logical. So they're kind of a hoot to listen to occasionally. Let's see. Then we have Guns for Everyone up in Colorado doing their podcast. So their podcast is usually pretty sporadic. They'll do it for a few weeks and then it's gone for a long time. They'll do it for a bit and then it's gone for a long time. So we're starting to see it sputter a little bit. I really enjoy their podcast. They have a refreshing perspective on stuff. They've been in there with their boots on the ground for a while, so their perspective is earned and not just, from afar. However, they're busy and they don't really have the ambition to do this, so they kind of just do it to do it, and which I like. It's a real podcast. It's not a big produced one, but this one's only 22 minutes long or something, 15 minutes long, so it got pretty short. I didn't listen to this one. It happened on a Thursday where they usually do it on Tuesday, so maybe those are indications that it's sputtering a little bit again, but hopefully they'll keep doing it. I'm not sure what their motivations are. They don't look for views, so I'm not sure how long it'll last this time, but it is a good one to watch if you're interested in actual conversations and not just hearing the same old stuff over and over again. Come on, puppy. What would you do? His little foot here, we're going to have puppy doctoring. See his little foot here? This one right here is broken. His nail is broken. So, if this was his nail somewhere around here, it's cracked. Like if it was a lobster tail, somebody cracked it. So I don't know if he got it stepped on or if he jammed it into something. A couple of times he's been out of sight. So he might have got this stuck in something and twisted it. But can you kind of see the crack right there? There's a crack in the side of his nail. And it must bother him really bad. It must hurt him really bad. See, he's pretty sensitive. And I don't know how long it's been like that, but it's not bleeding or anything. Sit down. But he did have sort of a big, nasty chunk behind it that I'm assuming was like a scab or something that got stuck in his ears. You want to sit down? And so for a couple of days there, he was just licking it nonstop. So I soaked it and then dipped it in the hydrogen peroxide and then grabbed that little ball off of there. And then he quit licking it. He was good to go for a while. I had been putting Neosporin on it, and that's where the glob came from. I'm thinking about Neosporin it right now because it's such an easy way to see that little crack on there. But he's so licky that he'll lick it all right off of here. And I have plenty of cones for her. I have 15 cones for her. And I have 1 cone for him. And I didn't put it aside because he's never needed it. So I don't know where his cone is or where a cone his size is. But I only have 1, and it's a girly cone too. It's a little pink cone. So whenever I find it, he's gonna have a little pink flower cone. But I have been putting Neosporin on it before when I didn't realize that he was so licky. Well, now he's not licking it, so I'm gonna try getting some Neosporin out and trying that thing right now. just happen to keep a tube of it right here with what we call a Q-tip. Don't lick it. Don't lick nothing. Don't lick it. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. Just jamming it in there. Just jamming it in there. It's no big deal. Yeah, it hurts. I know. Yeah. I wish this stuff had more painkiller in it. Like, isn't there a lidocaine? Is there a tooth one? There's some kind of pain that you can get in a tube like this. I wish they'd make that for dogs. See, if you'll just leave it set there, that would be good for him, I think. Of course, I don't use the Neosporin. I use the generic version, but same thing. All right, so nah, he would rip that bandage off. I think he needs a cone, but I'm pretty sure I know the bucket the cone is in or the bin the cone is in, but it's underneath of everything because he's high maintenance. Anyway, so speaking of high maintenance, Tony is on with the Gun and Gear Review podcast on Tuesdays, so pretty much same time Ghost is on. These guys are doing their podcast, although they have a bunch more people on and they talk quieter. So you have to turn this one up and you have to turn Ghost way down. Let's see. So then we get Dragonman. I think last week we were like,
how you doing, guy?
Hey, Dragonman's going to clear out this section of his house next to his house and he's going to put up a garage. And then this week, boom, he's got his garage built. Look at how freaking awesome that thing is. 26 car garage, metal building, framed. Framed. All them trusses. Dang, how cool is that? And then I think he said he's going to do a blacktop. He's just going to have them blacktop the floor. So it's going to be like a parking lot in there. Although I think I would have rather have it parking lot first, right? And then let that off gas and shit before you put a building around it. But yeah, he's Dragonman. He can do whatever he wants. So pretty cool. And then at the end here, he's just like, oh, this guy needs a shit ton of dirt in that wheelbarrow. So Dragonman just grabs his bucket loader, grabs a little thing off the corner there, comes over, dumps it into his wheelbarrow like he's done it a billion times before. Then he just jumps out and continues the rest of the video. Dragonman's like 80. He's at least 70. So you have made the decision to not go hang out at Dragonman's. Like, I don't know how many times I've been there now, but I'm just saying Dragonman's is happening. J.M. Davis was a thing, and you are all young enough that you can know, you never have to feel bad about not going to see J.M. Davis when he was live and kicking. You can go see Dragonman right now. Speaking of things that you can do right now, we've got the Mouse Party. Happens on Wednesday night. At this point, it's still every Wednesday night, and it's open to everybody who wants to jump in. There's no topics, and it's just a lot of fun. I think there might have been a bracket this week. We had Night Strike, Quark, and Gizzard earlier, but it was a pretty good discussion with DJ and Crump. We were chatting about the laws and the consequences, I guess, and I appreciate having a real discussion, talking about possibilities and nuances, I guess, and not just a shit ton of speculation. I mean, it's speculation, I guess, but I like to think of it as more thought out speculation rather than Yahoo speculation. Then we get the U.S. shooting journey to Paris 2024. So I don't know if anybody pays attention to the Olympic shooting sports, USA shooting, but there's the Paris Olympics this year, and we are pretty good. So you can follow our Olympic team or not, but we have a wide and vast shooting community, gun community, and I, for one, have neglected our Olympic teams for most of my life. I was vaguely aware of them, but you don't have to do that. You can be aware of them and I don't know I think they have to be supported. They're not supported by the government, so they're supported by individuals. I think they're supported by the industry. But yeah, I would kind of feel like the United States should win all shooting stuff. You know what I'm saying? And the only way that happens is by supporting the community, supporting the athletes. So is this telling us the results, or is this telling us that it's on the way? I thought I had it in the in the gun calendars, because it only happens. Yeah, they're showing 2020, so I think it's still on the way. So I don't think it's happened. And all right, guy, you're going down. You're going put down right now. And don't lick that little toe. Don't lick your little toe. I put you down. You go tell Mello about what happened. Show her your little toe. Don't lick it. I still can't tell. I think this is saying the journey too, like showing us the lead up. Yeah, they're not showing us the results. That was 2020. So again, we only get the Olympics every 4 years. So we only have an opportunity to support our athletes every 4 years. And what the hell? Hey, what are you doing? I just said don't lick your foot. He's sitting right behind me and licking his toe. Anyway, we only get one opportunity every 4 years to support our athletes. You can, or you can make the decision to not. Gonna make licking. He says if toe licking's an Olympic sport, he would win. He'd be better than the whole world at toe licking. Rapid Fire Radio happens 3 times a week, most of the time when he's not traveling or doing something. So this week they've been reacting to the news that's been going on. And so Toby does a show on Sunday. That's a radio show. He does a show on Wednesday, which is the main show. And then on Tuesday, there's a ever-shortening, ever-dwindling 2A Tuesday segment of the Grace Curley Show. It's a radio show in Boston. So I guess I should have said we're in the radio show segment of the thing. So I think whenever I can, I try to watch Toby's shows. I think he has a really good mix of paying attention to what's going on, both with guns and with Second Amendment stuff, and has a really good, I think he's probably the best at juggling, like being on the radio with a actual radio host, and then following the comments and stuff. There's plenty of people that can do comments, and there's plenty of people that can ignore comments. Toby does a good job of juggling both. All right, so I guess I haven't been paying attention to the time. Gun Owners Radio is San Diego Gun Owners organization out of Southern California that do a radio show also. Theirs is on Sunday afternoons, totally worth listening to. There's actually a pretty good group of people, growing group of people that listen to that show live. Like Toby, they're able to listen to the live chat while it's happening, while they're streaming, while they're broadcasting and streaming. So you can be part of that show. Now, they won't usually talk about the comments. They do every once in a while, but they definitely interact with the live comments more and more, which is neat. Again, the internet is fun, and it isn't just one way. A lot of us, people don't even realize, I think. A lot of people who are new, haven't, just grew up in the 2000s or whatever. You had the internet your whole life. Back in the old days, you had a newspaper. Like, you didn't know shit. Like, you had to go find out shit. And then when you did find out something, it was old ass fucking news. So you didn't know nothing. Like, you heard about shit way after it happened. And then eventually that radio thing happened, telegraph and radio, and then television, not far after that. So eventually everybody started listening to the same news. So now everyone could be manipulated. And they started to, have messages that they were getting out, and they called that programming. Then we got to where the cable happened, and that was more difficult to get a singular message out there. And we were able to diversify the programming and the messaging. And it got pretty interesting, and we all started to understand that there's more than one or two perspectives out there. And then when the internet came along, that democratized information to an extent, because all you had to do is be able to get to the internet and participate, and you could be in the conversation and adding to the collective knowledge base. We're still figuring that out. We're still struggling with it. It's not like we've mastered that by any means, but the direction that we're headed in is truly open source. It's truly collaborative, and it's difficult to squelch, and it's difficult to manipulate. So it's awesome to see things like a gun owners' rights organization that utilizes multiple methods of transmission of data to create content on a weekly basis that creates an audience of people who are like-minded that can then be motivated to create awareness or to, actually get some stuff done. Super neat to be able to be part of this stuff in 2024. It's not over, and it isn't like we're done lifting, but we've got a lot of people who are capable of lifting and have seen people lift in the past and are willing to lift. So great time to be part of the whole thing. All right, that being said, now we can jump over to gun calendars. We're going to do this quickly because I'm running out of time today. I got some more stuff I got to do tonight. I guess it's a good thing nobody's saying nothing out in the chat. DJ's out there. Welcome. Thanks for posting some links out there. All right, so guncalendars.com is, like you see on the screen, just essentially it's a calendar and a bunch of lists so that if you're interested in things that have happened or will happen, anniversaries of events and holidays and that kind of thing, in addition to things that are upcoming. So that's the goal over here. You'll notice there's no advertisement. It's our Patreons, the people that support what we do as capitalists who throw a couple of their hard-earned dollars at us every month so that we can support the servers. There's 3 servers that we have for all the different websites. There's the websites themselves. That's cost a couple of bucks every day, literally. And then there's the software, which isn't the biggest piece of the equation, but it takes some amount of time and effort. Actually, this software does cost money. Not a lot, but it costs money. So our Patreons are capitalists that want to see this stuff exist and give me the time to monitor it and maintain it. And I really do appreciate that. That being said, I say all that because on the podcast, you're not hearing you're not seeing that the website guncalendars.com, isn't some kind of, hey, we're going to sell you calendars, because there's no calendars to buy. And it's not a, hey, let's bring you here for calendars, but then, chat you up on some event that somebody's paying us to tell you about. Nope. None of that's happening here. It's just trying to get data out there so that you can have a more comfortable conversation and a more, normalized guns. Have like a more normal conversation about guns in our culture. All right. So the other part of this is that this is live, but then this will be a podcast for people, and that podcast will probably be coming out a couple of weeks from now because of the way that I'm able to schedule all this. So we've talked about this each week, but Father's Day is coming up tomorrow. Then we have Outdoor Summer Retailer, which is essentially like a little tiny SHOT Show for sporting goods stores that happens in, pretty sure it's happening in Salt Lake City again. That's coming up next week. We've got Juneteenth coming up on the 19th of June. We've got the same day, the M1903. Springfield was adopted, and guess what? The year 1903. There was also the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act. One of the pieces of the Gun Control Act of 1968 was passed, I guess. Then on the 20th, we have the anniversary of Neil Knox being born. Neil Knox is the guy who was responsible for the NRA waking up and becoming an organization and not hiding in Colorado back in the 1970s. His sons are out there continuing on that legacy. We've got the anniversary of Fairbairn dying in next week, of knife and self-defense fame. That's a big deal for Marines and people who like knives. Next week is the anniversary of the Baby Browning being patented. That's the little 25 ACP version of a pistol, like a little tiny pistol. So in 1909, Browning decided that the 25 ACP should exist. So he invented the cartridge and a gun to wrap around the cartridge. It's essentially a little tiny pistol that fits in the palm of your hand, and it's little. And that was made originally by FN, and then by Colt, and then by, dozens. I've literally made videos when I did the research, but dozens and dozens of companies made millions and millions of those little tiny pocket guns. And that's how we know since 1908 people have carried guns in their pockets. because nobody bought those guns for any other reason than carrying them in their pockets. There was no laws. There was just bad people, dogs running around. They were scared of witches. I don't know in 1909 what the hell was going on, but millions of those guns were made around the world, and people have been carrying guns in their pockets since 1909, and we still exist. The race wasn't, the human race wasn't wiped off the planet because of these little tiny guns. I always like to put those kind of pieces of history out there for people that would challenge and say that carrying guns is new. But maybe we're only in the second phase of gun culture, you could say. But explain how we've had pocket pistols since 1909 in the millions. Anyhow, John Thompson passed away next week, back in 1940. Of course, the Thompson submachine gun, the first submachine gun. We have Jonathan Browning, John Browning's dad, passing away on the same day, only 55 years earlier. Wait, no, the other way. 19 years earlier. How crazy is that? So, yeah, John Thompson and John Browning's dad were both alive for a good chunk of the time together on the planet. I never think about that. John Browning's dad, the guy who brought us from single action guns through, he invented he didn't invent lever actions, but him shooting a lever action, him shooting a gun and seeing the recoil made him turn a lever action into the potato machine gun, that potato scoop machine gun. And from there, he invented machine guns, and then he put a sear in them and turned them into semi-autos and created pumps, I think, also, right? So Browning did all that. His dad was alive while John Thompson was over there inventing the Thompson submachine gun. Wait, was he? That doesn't make sense. No, Thompson was only 19 when Jonathan Browning died, but still, John Browning's dad was still alive until John Thompson was 19. I never thought about it that way, but that's what the calendar's all about. Ruger. So Ruger passed away in July. So I guess this is the anniversary next week of Ruger being born back in 1916. So it looks like, unless they change the dates, the next Saturday, the 22nd, will be the Oklahoma Full Auto and Shoot. So if anybody's in the Tulsa area and wants to see a really cool machine gun shoot and trade show, check out the OFAST shoot. It's been going on since the mid-2000s. The Law Enforcement Officers Protection Act went into effect. The anniversary of that is next Saturday. The Coast Guard Auxiliary, their birthday is coming up next Sunday on the 23rd. We have the Kentucky Rifle being adopted as the state rifle of the state of Kentucky back in 2013. The anniversary of that is on the 25th, which is the same as the anniversary for Little Bighorn, Custer's Last Stand. That's where, well, I won't get into all that. But then we've got the anniversary of the NFA coming up on the 26th. Boo. We got the Pennsylvania rifle being adopted in 2014. So there's only 10 states with a state rifle. Texas, I think, was the last one to adopt one. It's one of those great opportunities for people who want to keep the ball rolling, keep some momentum going, to suggest a state rifle for your state and then petition to have that pushed through. Every state has like a state tree and a state bird and a state rock and a state bug. Have a state rifle or a state gun. Hypo was saying Jetfire mag in a 1908 Colt EDC. I'm stuck in the first. What does that mean? I don't know what you mean. Jetfire mag in a 1908 Colt. Is that a magazine from that? I'm losing whatever you're saying there. Let's see. So then we've got the anniversary of J.M. Davis. Mentioned him before. Coolest dude ever. Was born in 1887, June 27th, 1887. The same date that the Brady Law was deemed unconstitutional by the Prince decision in 1997. So the Prince decision was Sheriff Prince in Arizona. So thanks to an Arizona sheriff, the Brady Law, which was originally the waiting period federally, was struck down. And then that's when they created NICS. So they were going to do NICS anyway, but Brady was just going to sit there and be an extra law for no reason at the federal level. But the sheriff in Arizona and another sheriff, I think in Montana, said no and pushed it all the way back up and had that deemed unconstitutional, and Brady Law went away. That was pretty fun times. That was in 1997. I think I had a little inclination back then of being an activist. I had no idea what you could do with it, but I thought people need to know about this kind of thing, because I remember that happened kind of in silence. Nobody was paying attention when that happened. Well, I guess I'll quit saying stuff. No, I won't, because we also have McDonald versus the city of Chicago. The anniversary of that is coming up on June 28th, 2010. So people talk about Heller. I don't know why. People like it because he's alive and he goes around doing stuff. And it was an important decision for sure. And now people talk about the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus the loser Bruin, who people are lazy and like to say the Bruin decision. But, and that one's important because it redefines some things in Heller, or whatever it's called, like reinforces some statements in Heller. But we had the Miller decision, and that happened after the Heller decision, and that was an important one for state issue being taken to the Supreme Court at a time when it wasn't the thing to do. It was important because it told the city of Chicago, or the state of Illinois, I guess, that you can't have cities creating these laws, that you're a state, you say the laws, and we're a country, we say the laws, cities can go screw themselves, is essentially what Miller said. Now, eventually Chicago said, oh, no, you know what? Because even though McDonald won versus the city of Chicago, and now the city of Chicago couldn't prohibit CCW. It was a couple of years later that, that was in 2010. So it was a couple of years later, like 2012, I think, or 14, that Rhonda Ezel had to sue the city of Chicago the first time and took that all the way to the Supreme Court and said, no, you have to not only allow CCW, but you can't prohibit having a range here either. And then Chicago was like, yeah, whatever. So then Rhonda Ezel had to take the city of Chicago back to the Supreme Court for a second time. So we have 3 Supreme Court cases that happened between Heller and the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus the loser Bruin. We had 3 Supreme Court cases that are all wins that happened in between those two, and they're ignored. So that's bullshit. And it's because we can't handle knowing that much detail. We should definitely be able to normalize understanding the 5 Supreme Court cases. Like, we can't handle 5 Supreme Court cases. We can only handle 2. So anyway, the McDonald decision is anniversary is on the 28th. And then I'll stop talking about the calendar. You can always go check out the calendar yourself. But I don't know. It's a little bit repetitious there because we're talking so far out into the future. But I try to do that because, this podcast, the people listening to the podcast are going to be experiencing that stuff that's 2 weeks out for us right now. All right, we get into the military interview section of the show. And I mean, if I had to stop doing everything, I'd probably keep doing some kind of a show on military interviews because I'm going to keep listening to these. These are awesome. If you don't take any of my other advice, then take this advice. Listen to some of these military interview shows. So much bullshit, ignorant crap gets said out there that it's annoying because people don't take the time to listen to the actual sources. The first thing you should know how to do is know your resources. And if you're going to listen to some dipshit with an agenda or some Yahoo who doesn't even have an agenda and just likes to regurgitate whatever they heard because they hear themselves talk, what the fuck? Like, that's not a source. That's just called entertaining yourself and wasting everybody's time. So listening to people who've been there and done that, listening to people whose job has been to study something, that's truly interesting. So that's where we're getting today with this first one. This guy, he literally wrote the book on Chinese intelligence in the 70s or something. Or maybe it was 1997 or something like that. But he wrote the book on Chinese intelligence simply because he went to China and ended up figuring out a bunch of stuff. So he wrote articles about it, or wrote a book, or wrote a what do you call it, like a school report or something for it. That got passed around, and then it turned into a book, and that got passed around even more. And then he ended up getting all kinds of interesting jobs, and he has an understanding of the way that China does business and is able to explain that. And he does that in this video. It's really interesting. And if you're frustrated by the conversations that happen about China, imagine if someone said, let's have a conversation about the United States. The United States is this way. They like to eat this for breakfast, or like they like this kind of music. You'd be like, you're wrong. Like, maybe somebody eats that for breakfast, but not everybody in the whole United States. And maybe some people like that music, but not everybody in the whole United States. And that's the same thing with China. So often we think, oh, China, like if they're all like one thing sitting there. No, they're like massively big, and they're tons of people, and they've been around for 2,000 years, and as China, something like that. So anyway, that's really interesting to hear somebody who's actually got a relevant perspective to put some of this stuff into light. I highly recommend listening to that episode. Now, if you just want to be entertained, and this was Combat Story, so this is the guy who's Apache pilot and a CIA operative for a while in doing this interview. So a really good interview. He lets the guy talk and ask good questions. Then you have last Friday. I think this was last Friday. Okay, I don't know where this happened. It might happen during the week, but this is a really good one. This was like how long was it? It's 2.5 hours of this conversation with an author who wrote about Lincoln. So President Lincoln from back in the old days. He had some of the first special forces, but the Confederates also had some special operations. They're not special forces. It's the dumbest way to say it. There's some of the first special operations units by both Lincoln and the Confederates. And they did some ballsy ass shit. Putting on each other's uniforms, walking in and just eating lunch, and then taking all their horses and leaving. Like just some ballsy shit. That you would have been killed for sure. Back in the day, or worse, made an example of, but people that, just essentially did some stuff. Really interesting conversation, though, about a lot of different adventures from both sides of, the Civil War, but essentially because it's all that old. This one was the one from today, from the team house, and some guy that was in our Army, or he was in Rangers and Special Forces. He did a CIF, so essentially grabbing really bad terrorists and taking them off to, what's that called? Cuba. So an interesting conversation. I only heard about a chunk of it before Night Strike went live. So I'll have to go back and listen to that one. Now, this one is pretty neat. Everybody talks about the border and what's been going on at the border and blah, blah, blah. So this is Ironclad's Borderland series. And this is a conversation with this lady who's former CIA, what's her name? Former CIA targeter. So essentially, she's somebody who understands the ability and the lack of ability to do background checks on these, whatever you want to call it, people coming across the border. Like, it's hard to call them criminals because you don't know. But for example, if a country who's an asshole wants to send somebody to the United States to do bad things, are they going to send somebody over who's got a record, or are they going to send somebody over who doesn't have a record? Like, that's the first thing you got to think about. So if they've got a record, they just send them over without any ID. And then how are we going to know if they've got a record or not unless that country tells us, right? So it doesn't really matter if they have a record or not. It's really just how they send them over here. So if they don't have a record, they can send them over here with all their credentials and nobody will care because they don't have a record, right? And if they have a record, like I said, they just send them over here without anything. And then we just accept them as a John Doe, essentially, and they're still here. So anyway, those kind of conversations. And then why, who and why who they'd want to send over here and why they'd want to send them over here. This one's about an hour. I wish it would have been longer. I don't know if they're trying to keep their episode short, or if it's some kind of bullshit Patreon thing where you only get an hour of it free and then you got to pay more for the rest of the show or something. I'm not really sure. I'm still on the fence about Ironclad, but I really like the Borderland feature. So there's nobody else talking about the border with any kind of real focus other than Jason Jones. So let me know if you have any feedback on Ironclad and the other like shows on that channel. There were a couple of other things, but I guess I didn't get everything included this week. But we've gone more than an hour or 90 minutes or whatever, so hopefully that's a good amount of stuff. I didn't really get much time to do anything this week. I didn't schedule anything, so all we did is chat with Tony on Saturday to do the Ask Gun questions, and we'll do that again tomorrow. It'll be episode 1776, so it'll be a special 1776 edition of Ask Gun questions. I think everybody's essentially gone to sleep because nobody's been saying anything out there for a while. So I'll go ahead and take that as an opportunity to wrap this thing up then. There are almost equal. So it isn't a week where more people are listening on X, but there is the challenge out there. If you're listening on X, make a comment. I don't know why people on X don't comment, but we finally figured out that the reason we're seeing so many views is because we broadcast on X and a whole bunch of people watch on X, which isn't cool. Thank you for that. But you're allowed to comment. I know that some people probably don't give a shit what you have to think when you're on X, but that's why we do this show live, is so that we can have audience participation. So feel free to participate next time. We'll be back tomorrow in the morning-ish, depending on where you are, afternoon, to chat with Tony, see what's going on with him, assuming he's available. And let's see, you got Brooke Cheney doing her suicide prevention Saturday. That happens every Saturday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. She Fires, I'll have her show on Sunday. And I'm going to be on Crump's show on Tuesday if you want to jump in and we'll chat. I'm not sure if he's got something to talk about, but we were chatting on Night Strikes earlier, and he invited me to jump on Tuesday. I'm going to be talking to Walk to Talk America before too long. They invited me to be on their podcast. And, well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I might be able to start. I have a couple of kind of projects here in the backyard to do. But aside from these projects I have to do that are just my projects, I could probably start doing some interviews ourselves for our Monday shows. So give me some ideas on who you'd like to have interviewed by us. And stay tuned for those interviews of me in the future here. We'll be back tomorrow. Nobody saying anything, so I'm going to quit saying stuff to react to the... Oops, that didn't work. This will work. Anybody ever seen this game before? Nobody's saying nothing. Okay, we're ending. I'll go over here. There's a link to Brooke's channel. Thanks for that. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to click on a couple of commercials. We've got a couple of commercials that Foss made for us. Well, you know what? Tomorrow is a overnight, I believe. I believe we're back to the overnight schedule.
This is Earl Benson reporting from downtown Topeka, where Gizzard Gary is rampaging through the city. Authorities have asked the public to stay indoors. They believe he will tire soon and need a nap. Gizzard Gary can normally be seen on Fowl Territory, Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. Wednesday, 8 p.m. for the channel members chat. Stay safe and give him the bird. Earl Benson signing off.
And then we'll use one of Foss's commercials for the Gear website store.
Captain, a vessel approaching.
On screen.
We're being hailed.
Every weekend over at gearwebsites.com, our online store, we have free Patch Friday. And that means that every order placed on our store on Fridays is going to include at least one free patch. So that's every order with no coupons, no minimum order, no codes needed. You place the order on Friday, and when it arrives to you, it's going to have at least one free patch. Your support means a lot to us, and financial support is critical. So thanks again to the people who keep us online through purchases at gearwebsites.com.